All right, let's get into the advisory now and a look at DIY retirement strategies and important deadlines that many people miss. Roger Perrett from Freshwater Wealth joins me for the first time for 2026. Happy New Year, Roger.
Thanks, Juliet.
So we were talking in the break there before, people get their paper diaries out, they get very excited about the start of the new year. What are we seeing in terms of planning and what should we be doing?
Yeah, that's right. There's a number of deadlines during the year that we have to ensure that we've got in the diaries, because if we miss them, it's a bit of that FOMO. We can miss a lot of opportunity in terms of saving or making money. So perhaps we could go through maybe 5 today.
Yep.
Bit of a teaser, maybe the 5th one could be saving like over $100,000. So
Ooh.
it's good to make sure that we're aware of that one.
All right, well, let's start with the dates that we must have in our diaries.
Yeah, exactly. So probably a good one if in the diary we're planning to sell a home this year. It's really important to get the money or potentially get the money into super within 3 months after you sell it. So it may not be on the radar to even consider super, but basically putting money into super can save tax now going forward, and we can also use the downsizer contribution for minimising the potential death tax. So probably not enough time to go through all those today, but just to call out, if we're planning to sell the home within 3 months, it's good to get advice or consider that downsizer contribution.
All right, now the age 60 and 65, often a critical turning point as you head towards retirement. Why are they so important here?
Yeah, so what it means is once we get to 60 and ends an employment agreement, you can see it here on the chart. Before 60, we can't touch super, but between 60 and 65, if we end an employment agreement, we can convert our super to a tax-free income. So we can basically save 15% tax on all our super, and we can generate an income. So people may be going, maybe changing jobs this year or have plans to. So if we're over 60 and we're ending an employment agreement, it's important to make sure that's in our diary too, to make sure that we can consider those tax savings in super. The second one there, you can see from 65 onwards, we don't have to end an employment agreement, we can just convert our super to tax-free income. So even if we don't need the income, it's worth considering because we're saving that tax from 15% to 0. There is some research to suggest that there's 700,000 Australians with money in super over 65, which are paying tax unnecessarily. So if we're planning on, or if you're turning 65 this year or know of someone turning 65, there's some basically tax savings up for grabs. So when you're putting their birth date in your diary or your birth date this year, make sure that you keep an eye on that one.
All right, what about the 30th of June? We know that's the end of the tax year. It is important. Why is it so important that we need to really highlight and colour in our diaries?
Yeah, that's right. So a lot of tax strategies are around 30 June, and that is the ultimate deadline. So once that has gone, we can't go back. The year's shut, so to speak. So the big call out there is certainly super contributions. We can't leave them to the last minute. A lot of the super providers don't accept money on the last day. It's really important to get organised and get that money, or plan to get that money in to super well before June 30. And the other one is prepaying interest. So if you've got investment loans and we're considering prepaying the interest, again, start early to make sure we've got that all organised well before June 30.
The tax return piece as well, some people are missing deadlines here. What should we be keeping in mind?
Yeah, so if you don't have an accountant, it's 31st of October. So for last year, that's been and gone. But if you do have an accountant, it's the 15th of May. I think the call out there is, besides putting it in late and having to charge fees or get charged fees, etc., for late submissions. One thing that's critical, if you have made a super contribution, it's really important before you lodge the tax return to tell your super provider that you want to claim a tax deduction on those super contributions. So you've got to lodge that form to tell the super provider, hey, you want to claim a tax deduction before you lodge your tax return. So that's super important to get that form in before you lodge your tax return on those due dates.
And in terms of, you said we're going to potentially earn some big money here. What is the date we need to know about that? Yeah,
so look, it may not apply to everyone, but age 67 is crucial for a couple of reasons. So 67, the tax changes dramatically if you're made redundant. Now, I've had a couple of people just recently where they've been made redundant, and depending on their age makes a huge outcome. I had one gentleman, he was in a bank, and you may recall the banks were putting off people last year, and himself and his friend were a similar type, time frame in that organisation, but one was over 67, and it literally cost him over, or several $100,000 extra in tax just because of his age. Now, obviously with a redundancy, we don't always get to choose that, but I know in several circumstances with employers, they often put the opportunity out there. Hey, does anyone want to take a voluntary redundancy? Or if you see a firm that's probably downsizing, maybe it's an opportunity before you're 67 to go and say, hey, would you like to make me redundant? Certainly can save you hundreds of thousands of dollars in tax being made redundant before 67 rather than after 67.
Don't you think companies would say, no, if you want to go, there's the door, or does it actually happen?
It actually happens, yeah.
Okay.
Like I've actually saw a gentleman this week,
Wow.
funnily enough, who I think they were basically, the writing was on the wall, the business is sort of shrinking, and he thought it was like quite a good opportunity for them to save the salary going forward, and also a redundancy payment for him. So that age 67 is crucial from a redundancy perspective, but it also opens the door for either the age pension, if you're entitled to that or eligible for that, or if not, there are healthcare concessions as well if you've got a health card. So 67 is one of those ages where there's an opportunity there to make sure you're across.
So when we're looking at DIY investments, so to speak, what is some of the biggest mistakes that you see people make?
Yeah, when it comes to this sort of late timing, just missing out on those deadlines, and I think part of it is you don't know what you don't know. So it's probably always good to get advice, come and see a financial advisor to make sure that you don't miss the boat and you don't miss those opportunities.
Let's talk a little bit more about super, particularly some of the changes that are coming in with Payday Super this year. How significant is that going to be, especially for some of these small businesses in terms of trying to budget for that?
Yeah, that's right. So the Payday Super, basically the change is before employers could make a contribution, basically 28 days after the end of each quarter. So you can imagine if an employee was receiving like an income fortnightly or monthly, the employer doesn't actually have to pay their super on those payments in several cases like months later. So the problem with that is sometimes, unfortunately, those businesses go under and then they can't afford those liabilities that they've accrued, and the employees miss out. So the changes are that now the payments into super have got to be at the same frequency as the employees getting paid. So if they're getting paid fortnightly, they've got to be paid, or their contributions have got to be made to super fortnightly as well. So you're absolutely right. For small businesses, their cash flow, instead of just waiting and they kick the can down the road, they're going to have to come up with that money far earlier. But it is better for the employee because they're going to be able to get the money in and get it invested far earlier as well.
Yeah, get the compound interest. Are there penalties if companies don't pay on time?
Yeah, there is, because of that risk that, it's a bit of a warning bell. If they're not paying on time, they're either maybe a little bit disorganised, or maybe they've got cash flow issues. So, certainly important for the employees to make it on time. And
just going back to one of your earlier points too about, just making sure that you get in your super contributions if you're adding yourself well before that June 30 date. I just wanted to get a little more clarity on that.
Yeah, sure. Like a lot of the large super funds, they won't accept the money right up until like 5 o'clock on the last day. Their deadline's a lot earlier than the 30th of June. So it's really important to make sure that you've got organised the money to start with, and then also you make that contribution well in advance and don't leave it to the last minute. Things like paying via BPay. BPay isn't instantaneous, so you could do a BPay payment on the 30th of June and it misses the boat or misses the deadline completely. So really important, don't leave it to the last minute in June, try and get those contributions well in advance.